This is Chapter 9 of Bold Predictions. What do you think that you would bet your own money on when it comes to 2023? The bolder, the better. Because if you're making them, I don't have to make them. Bold prediction number 1. Pretty simple and straightforward. This is from you, not me, by the way, if you're listening on podcast. Michigan just wins the national championship. Well, I make that one an 8.25 on the boldness scale. Some of you are joking with me that I am living on 8.25 or 8.5 right now, which is pretty consistent because a lot of these bold predictions have been about that bold. Now, their current odds are plus 850. So for those of you who don't follow gambling, that makes them the 4th odds-on favorite, not to win the Big Ten, to win the national championship. And I would also add, when you look at those teams, the Ohio States, the Bamas, the Georgias, whoever's up there, pound for pound, Michigan probably has the fewest unanswered questions out of that group. I think that's fair to say. You don't have to think they're the best, but think about the questions. You've never seen Carson Beck start a game for Georgia. We don't even know who's going to start for Alabama. Ditto for Ohio State. At least we know who J.J. McCarthy is at Michigan. At least we know they got a 1-2 in the backfield at running back. So there's some things we know about them. So this is not the wildest prediction. It's just hard to win a national championship, first off. And that's why I put the 8.25 on the boldness scale. And secondly, it's been hard for Michigan to get traction once they get in the playoff. Not everything that has not happened is in a cannot happen category, as we preach all the time on the show. But out of the top 8 in the Big Ten, out of the top 8 when it comes to odds to win the Big Ten, they're the only ones set at quarterback. So it's a really, really interesting time up there. They're 7th in FBS in returning production. I have 2 words written in all caps on the sheet of paper in front of me. Prove it. That's all they have to do. That's all, by the way. That's all they have to do. Prove it. Next up, since we're here on the West Coast, as Pac-12 Pate, I would be remiss if I didn't honor this bold prediction while we're out here in Los Angeles, because it's really bold. How bold? Well, listen to this. 2 Pac-12 teams make the college football playoff. Now, mind you, since 2014, 2 of them total have made the playoff. As I mentioned earlier in the show, if you're watching the entire thing, we had Oregon the first year, and we had Washington a couple of years later, and then the door slammed on their face, and they haven't gotten another one in since then. Southern Cal was kind of close last year, but they lost the Pac-12 championship game. Oh, by the way, the prediction says 2 Pac-12 teams are going to make the playoff, and one of them won't be USC. So exclude the Trojans on an already borderline impossible task for the Pac-12. I'm calling this one a 9.75 on the boldness scale, leaving that little shred of possibility, but also acknowledging this is pretty ridiculous. You got to have a catastrophe take place in the SEC and the Big Ten. Notre Dame better not be on their game this year. The Big 12 needs to cannibalize itself collectively, and I think even if that happens, you got to have 2 Pac-12 teams, not USC apparently, that have to rise above and beyond. So let's just say it's Oregon and Washington, and they have to rise above and beyond. I think the best path for this is they play twice, and whoever wins the regular season matchup loses the conference championship in both competitive games, 38-35. And the committee looks, and they see a bunch of chaos around, and they say, hey, why not? Both of these teams profile out as playoff teams. The Pac-12 was good this year, so let's not judge it on what it has been. Let's judge it on what it was this year. That's the path, but this is tough. 9.75 on the boldness scale for me. I went 9.25 on the next one. We're going to Oxford, Mississippi here. Ole Miss wins 10 games. They are a team right now with a preseason over-under of 7.5. So they're going to have to clear that substantially. But I made this a 9.25 because I know they play at Bama, they play at Georgia, they got LSU, they got A&M, and they got Tennessee. You're telling me they got to go 3-2, worst case, against that stretch, and then go undefeated the rest of the way. I just don't think it's going to happen. If they were returning a superstar at quarterback, that would still be a tall task. But as it stands, they're not. And as it stands, this is not a loaded roster that's got multiple top 5 classes baked into it. They're having to heavily portal every year. I praise the job Kiffin's doing, don't get me wrong. So this is not a knock on them. In fact, I credit them. But when you're asking them to clear this kind of bar, go 10-2 this year, that's tough. They have won 10 games twice in the college football playoff era. Our best guess is they'll be favored in maybe 7 games this year. So that one's going to be tough. Yeah, not much more to say about that. You're playing that 5-game stretch, and a lot of those games are back-to-back, guys. So it's going to be tough to clear that 7.5. It's going to be tough to hit that 8-win mark. Let's worry about that before we worry about hitting the 10-win mark. And lastly, This one was kind of interesting because I kind of misread it for a little while. Jesse had to correct me. A new Big 12 team makes the Big 12 championship game. I took that to mean one of the teams that hasn't been there before. No, you guys are talking about those brand new teams. You're talking about Brigham Young, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF. So I go and I look at the win total market, which is not always the end-all be-all, especially in the Big 12, as history has taught us. UCF has the 7th best odds to win the conference. Brigham Young 10th, Cincinnati 10th, Houston 12th. I'm just going to use basic deductive reasoning, and I'm going to say Central Florida has the best shot here. Central Florida is coming off back-to-back 9-win seasons. Pretty good team. Gus Malzahn, I will continue to maintain, probably has the ability to see the future with the way he has navigated this sport. He is making massive buyout money from Auburn to coach in Orlando, Florida, as they've become a Power 5 team. That's how you figure it out. That's when you know someone's figured it out. But the thing about it is, for them to play for a Big 12 championship, when they are replacing 4 starting offensive linemen, is going to be extremely difficult. Not impossible, but extremely difficult. They also are, if you want to go glass half full, they profile as the 3rd team in the Big Ten when it comes to returning production level. But I'm making this one an 8.75. Out of the 4 of them, it's the Big 12. Anything can happen. We've learned that over the past 24 months, but that one's going to be tough. So, new Big 12 team makes the conference title game, not the playoff, but the conference title game. That's an 8.25 at the very least for me.